Think of these quick tip episodes like a cold water swim. In just a few minutes, you can get some amazing benefits to support you on your speaking journey. And bonus, the only thing that's getting wet here is your appetite to try this stuff out. And if you have a question you want me to answer about anything related to speaking, storytelling, pitching, performance or humour, then DM me on Instagram, LinkedIn or Twitter at SarahArcher15. Hello and welcome to the show. It's great to have you watching and listening to this episode 307 of the Speaking Club podcast. So this is a quick tip episode, and it all came about because I had a client who was originally booked to do a talk at a conference in front of her target audience. Great gig. But last minute, they switched her talk to become a fireside chat with the host and founder of the whole of the conference. It's still a wonderful opportunity, but not what we'd prepped for initially. So her question to me was, Sarah, how can I, get my point across in this fireside chat, which is essentially an interview, as well as I would be able to if I was actually doing this talk? And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because as speakers, it's not just on, conference stages or, company stages that we are speaking. In today's world, there are so many other opportunities for you to get your message out there into the hearts and minds of your target audience. And there's podcast interviews. There are these fireside chats, there are YouTube interviews, all sorts of panel interviews, all sorts of things. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, to give you a way of thinking about how you can effectively share your message in those scenarios, okay? So let's start with the problems that I see come up for people here. First of all, and this is a big one, some people aren't even clear on what the talking points should be that they want to get across. They haven't got that clarity on their messaging or how to land it in the way that's going to resonate most with their target audience. So that's the first thing. Other things that I see are not having a strategy for the speaking opportunity. And that applies to speaking on stage as well. So what do I want to get out of this? What's the message that I want to get out there? What do I want this to do for me and for the message that I want to share? So being strategic and intentional, that's something that people miss out on. The other thing I find is that people want to use that opportunity to literally regurgitate the talk. And that's not the thing to do when you're in an interview setting. Yes, there's definitely ways to get parts of your talk across, but we don't want to come across as a robot. We don't want to sound inauthentic or heavily scripted, and it'll turn people off. So that's an issue that I see for people in this setting. Another problem I see come up is because some speakers, because they're not in control, they get panicked. And it's like, I don't know how I'm going to prepare for this, or I just wish I was able to control this. Because on stage, obviously, if you're delivering your message from you to the audience, you can do that. But in a conversation, things might go in different directions. That's actually a bonus. But it's getting out of that panic mindset to see this, to see how you can manage this and influence this positively and still feel in control. Then the other thing I see is that speakers will focus on info. I've got to get this out there rather than engagement. And this is like you're talking to another person, and we must always keep that in mind. So we don't want to just spew up everything we know. We want to be mindful, listen, and so on. So those are the problems that I see. Now, what are the possibilities around this? So there are absolutely loads. I've had Interviews on podcasts lead to more clients, speaking opportunities. Other interviews I've been interviewed as part of events, which has brought my brand and my message to a different audience. So loads of opportunities. So you can come across as engaging and natural and respectful. It is possible to do that in this setting. You obviously have the chance to create new fans. You're effectively getting in front of other people's audiences here. And this is something that I hear often. How do I can't be a speaker unless I've got an audience. This is a great way to start building your own audience by getting in front of other people's audiences. And sometimes when you are starting out as a speaker, podcast guest spots, interviews on people's YouTube channels are a great way to get seen and heard by people that would otherwise have come across you, and build that authority and credibility whilst you're doing it. As I said, they're a great platform to be seen, to get booked for other gigs, and also having a conversation with someone in a fireside chat, on a panel, on a podcast, etc. That person that you are talking to is also someone that you can develop a relationship with, to grow your network with, and they will know other people too. So don't forget to try and, build the relationship first. It's not about transactional stuff. Build the relationship, but see that the potential from that going forward is also there as well. So lots of opportunities to be prepared, to get your talking points across, to build a following, but at the same time, coming across as your authentic self, not some scripted robot, okay? This is the art of the interview, is getting, where you want to get to without it feeling like you are steering things or not listening or manipulating the conversation. So what are the principles to get the most out of these interview opportunities? First of all, and it's kind of like the obvious one that I mentioned as a problem, you've got to be thinking strategically and intentionally about the opportunity. In the same way that you would prepare for a huge speaking opportunity on stage, do the same thing here. Who is their target audience? Where's the overlap with you? How can you add most value for the host and for the audience, whilst at the same time creating those, hooks to get your talking points in, okay? So we want to be thinking about this in three parts. So what do you do before the interview opportunity? Well, you've got to prepare for success. So I think, sometimes there is this view that you are not in control, but most interviewers, whether it's at a conference or on a podcast or wherever, are open to input from you on what questions you want to be asked, as long as it is in service of delivering value to their audience alongside whatever it's going to do for you. I know as a podcast host, it's one of the things that I ask people is there anything you specifically want me to ask you? And I always take ideas on board. Some podcast hosts will be quite happy for you to prepare all the questions to ask them. It all depends, but do see this as a partnership rather than you're just waiting for them to deliver something to you. So you can influence, as long as you bear in mind that it's got to be in service of delivering value to the host and to the audience, okay? It is not all about you. And in service to your message, obviously. Alongside the questions that you're proposing, and do it in a sensitive way as well, alongside the questions, think about what points are going to be most relevant for this audience to get them from where they are. And that's a great thing to bear in mind. Where are they? How sophisticated are they in relation to the problem that you solve and the solution that you offer? So, you may be at a different starting place with this specific audience than you may be with others. So think about where they are. and which points that you think are going to be most beneficial to them and move them forward on the journey. Now, as I said, we don't want to get stuck in this information thing. People want you to come onto their show or be having a chat with them because you've got something interesting. It's the same as when you talk. It's got to be something unique. We don't just want to regurgitate information. Information is cheap. People can go and look stuff up on Google. So how are you going to share your unique perspective on things, your insight, your opinions, in service of your message and in service of delivering value to the audience? And so the best way that we can do that is identifying those talking points, but looking at what stories you can tell to get those points across. Okay, so don't just come up with the points, think about the stories, because the best interviewees are people who have stories to share. And you'll have heard it if you listen to my show. The best guests are those that have really interesting experiences and short stories to share. And if you're doing it right anyway, most of this stuff is about your lived experience. So, trust that you've got the answers to whatever questions come up, even if they're not the ones that you saw before or that you'd planned for. In the moment, trust that the right answer will come. Okay, so what do you do during the show? First of all, or during the panel interview, make sure if it's a visual, if you're on camera or on stage, make sure first of all, just, aesthetically, that you are dressed in congruence with your brand. We want to make sure that what people, there's congruence in what we say, in the message and in the way that we look. And that's just something to bear in mind, and make sure you're comfortable as well. We don't want you to pretend to be something else. We want you to be you. So do that aesthetic prep and check whether, if it's a podcast, it's going to be video as well as audio, okay? Just so that you're prepared and you have the mic and all of that good stuff as well. So actually, when you're in the conversation, there's some things that I want to give you some tips on. So sometimes people might ask you questions and it doesn't seem like you'll be able to share an important bit of context or, a story related to one of your talking points that that they need to hear by the way the question is worded. So what I want to give you here, and this is one of the big tips I gave to my client who asked me the question, is around these segue responses. So we want to be respectful, we want to show that we've listened, and we definitely want to answer the question. We do want to do that. We're not a politician. This isn't about us sleazy and avoiding just to get our point across and keep repeating it like politicians do. This is us being respectful, answering the question, but also giving us the opportunity to make a point that is valid for the audience to hear in service of our message. So one of the responses you might want to use is, that's a great question. And to answer it, I first need to, and then set the context or whatever. Another one could be, it's important to look at this question from a number of different angles. Another great way for you to go somewhere else first and then come back to actually answering the question. And then finally, another one, here's the context that really matters when we're considering the answer to that question. Okay, so can you see I'm acknowledging what they've said and then I'm shifting it slightly before I get back to actually answering the question. Or maybe like it is actually the case that people need context before, they hear the specific answer that you need to give to the question. And in all of this, if you can tell those stories to show, not tell, then that's going to be really important. People will just remember the story so much more easily than a bit of information. So have the stories ready. I'm going to repeat that, is so important. Okay, so that's during. I think also during, use the host's name. That's always a really good tip because it develops that relationship for you and with you and the person speaking. It is a conversation, but it also, I think, is nice for the audience to hear. It's not to do it every time because it will be a distraction, but every now and again, just say, "That's a great question, Sarah," or whoever. It's nice when we hear our name, and it just makes it more conversational. And I think that's it. At the end of the day, remember that this is a conversation. It's a two-way thing. It's not a monologue. And you also have the opportunity to ask the host a question, and just sort of say, well, what do you think about that? Or how does this show up in your world? If it's, again, in service of your message and delivering value to the audience, there's no reason why you can't ask the host a question back. So there's some tips for during the interview. Okay, now after, I would always encourage you to ask for a recording or the video and audio of your appearance on that channel, be it the conference for the Fireside chat or a podcast or YouTube, whatever, because that's a great asset for you to leverage and repurpose for your speaking career. Okay, so always ask. The other thing that I would say is that clip some great talking points. So the host will possibly do something with that footage, but you can not just use it on your speaker page or for part of your show reel. Actually take some clips and use that to share on social media. Not only does it show that you are doing things, but some of those things that you say on a podcast or wherever can be gold that you might then want to put back into your actual talk. Maybe you haven't said it in that way before, and it really lands well. So get some clips, start using those clips to share with your own audience and to build that credibility and authority around the topic that you're talking about. And just share, make the most of every opportunity to that you are speaking to build that speaking career and speaking business. So I hope that was helpful for you today. Speaking is just such an essential tool for all of us, whether we're actually speakers or whether we're in business. And I don't believe that you can be successful today without, having confidence in your communication. So all those tips, my gift to you today so that you can absolutely rock the next interview that you do. Good. So that's all from me. All I want to say to you now is thank you very much for watching the show or listening to the show. And I would be so grateful if you could leave a comment below and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching the Speaking Club here. Or if you are listening to the podcast, to leave a rating or review. A great way to do that, very simple, it just takes a couple of minutes, is go over to ratethispodcast.com/TSC and you can just leave it there. Or you can leave it on the platform that you're listening to the podcast, whether it's an app or Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, wherever. Really, really appreciate that because it'll help other people find the show and recommend it. Use the old word of mouth as well. Maybe you bump into someone at the coffee shop, who you end up talking about speaking or communication. Point them in the direction of the Speaking Club. Really, really grateful. Go out, get your message out there. And until next time, we've got some amazing guests coming up for you over the next few weeks. You are going to definitely want to subscribe because I promise you won't want to miss those. But in the meantime, until we next meet, what I have to say to you is, as usual, go out, grab your life by the nuts, and get cracking. Bye-bye. It's a nightmare. You're an expert with so much to say, but now that you've been booked to speak, you're struggling to know exactly what to talk about. You want a talk that engages the audience and wins you new clients without you losing your personality or anyone feeling pitched to. But what happens when you sit down to create that talk is that you end up staring at a blank page for ages, or worse, surrounded by hundreds of sticky notes with content that you could include. With so much material, you just don't know where to start or finish. Don't worry, because many experts like you face exactly the same challenge. And that's why I created the Blank Page to Stage Guide. In just 50 minutes, this breakthrough resource is going to help you identify the big idea of your message, make it relatable for the audience that you're speaking to, and convey it all in a way that gets the audience inspired and on board with your idea. And it works even if you have tons of material or your subject feels less than exciting. If you want to cut through swathes of content and get a talk that you're excited to share, your audience loves, and wins you new clients, then grab your Blank Page to Stage Guide from saraharcher.co.uk/new-guide-TSC. Oh, I forgot to say, it's completely free. Enjoy!